Welcome to another epic episode of Falcor's Mighty Adventures. First of all, beard check. It's growing here, nothing here, nothing here. And I'm starting to get a Sir Francis Drake vibe. Sir Francis Drake if you were sent to a concentration camp. But it's never grown like this before because I've always trimmed it whenever it did this weird growth thing. We're just gonna clear this place up quickly. I'm gonna dedicate this video to a guy called Carl Jung. He's obviously a man of culture and knows his Titan quest. He's been commenting on my videos and I really appreciate it because you can tell the guy's a fan of the game and he's also enjoying the commentary. So my ideal audience, really, Carl Jung, my man, this goes out to you. Hope you enjoy it. I hope I'm not embarrassing the Titan Quest community. I think we're doing pretty well. We're pretty much halfway through the game. If we get better gear, we're gonna go really quick through the third act, and then we're gonna go to the ending of the game. Today's subject is basically continuing with the story. Last we heard was that I was going through chemo and they were letting me go home. Hold on, let me just really quickly, I'm sorry, this always happens. We're just gonna put some, there we go. We were going through chemo and then they're sending me home from time to time. It's basically like from half a month to 1 month of chemo, or sometimes a month and a half, and then 1 week or 2 weeks of staying home with my family and my girlfriend and really being very careful. One thing I might not have mentioned is when you're going through chemo as a treatment, in general, you have to consider yourself like someone who has no immune system. And you might be thinking, oh, but then how are you going home? Like you've got no defenses. Technically, you do have defenses, but they are really, really weak. So for example, if I just finished a chemo session of like, let's say a month, within that month my defenses went down to 0, so 0 white blood cells, and then they would go up again over time. Sometimes it would take weeks for like a single white blood cell to be made again, because your bone marrow is really like hit hard, so it needs time to recuperate. So what would happen is maybe I do 1 month of chemo and then a week or 2 weeks of just waiting, doing nothing in the hospital until my defenses go up a bit, and then they would let me go. And even if I had, like, let's say 1,000 white blood cells, I would still have a problem where the doctors would be like, don't take this too seriously, like don't take your defenses too seriously, I consider them completely offline. So yeah, I'd go home and I'd have to wear a face mask everywhere. I couldn't eat certain foods. I had to act like I was in the hospital, really. Sometimes I would even sleep with my mask on. One of those thick masks. They're good, they're really good quality, but they're thicker and their elastic bands are stronger, so they would like leave, lines and things like that. But the point is, we're going through something like that, and I gotta go back and get some healing potions. We were going through something like that, where I was going and coming from the hospital, until eventually they did another bone marrow check, which said, to check how much of the disease I still had. And they were like, if it's below 3%, which they doubted, they were like, I don't know if we're gonna reach that, but if it is below 3%, technically we can stop giving you chemo and we can move on to the next stages, which were, preparing for the transplant and things like that. So we waited with my. I spent the time playing World of Warcraft with my brother at home. That's all I did, and we waited and we waited for for the results to come back and things like that. And finally, they call us and they're like, "We've got the results, but we want you to, we want to see you. We want to tell you the results in person." And I was so worried because usually good news they tell you over an email. Bad news they tell you over, they want to tell you in person, which is the professional way of doing it. So my brother was like, "This time I want to go with you for good luck." And he was like, let's just be cautiously optimistic. We don't know anything. Maybe things went well, maybe things went bad. And by that stage, you learn not to get your hopes up, no matter what. If you get your hopes up, you're fucked. Because psychologically, any sort of problem will completely bring you down. You have to, I'd almost say you have to consider yourself a dead man walking. You really do. Because otherwise, you can be optimistic, sure. You can be like cautiously optimistic, but I would highly suggest, if you, I don't want you, I mean, God forbid you go through this, but if you do go through this, just keep, be cautious. Be very cautious about like how you see the whole thing. So the point is, we were trying to be optimistic, but it looked like it was going to be bad. And we go to the hospital, and the doctor's there. Her name was, I'm not going to say her name, but the doctor was there, and she's like, "Hey, Mr. Farkas, how you doing?" And I was like, "I'm doing great. How are you doing?" She's like, "I'm doing fantastic." "Well, we got some news. We got the results back." And we're like, "Well, what is it?" And she's like, "Well, you've got 0.01%, so 0.01%, decimal, smaller than 1%, of the disease. Congratulations." And I'm like, "Wow, that's incredible." And my brother almost cried. I'm pretty sure he almost cried. He was really, really, really happy. We were both super happy. And we're like, "So that's it. That's like less than 3%. We're done with chemo." And she's like, "Well, well, that's exactly why I called you here. You see, we were talking it through with the other guys. And we were thinking, why don't we just kill this disease right here, right now?" And I'm like, "What does that mean? What do I have to do?" And she's like, "Well, we could give you a really, really strong, really short, but very strong dose of chemo with some drugs you've never heard before, some stuff you've never taken, and we could maybe bring it down to nothing." What they were looking for, in fact, was something called it's something like negative, undetectable negative. What's the word? There's a word for this. It's like when the disease is either undetectable or it comes out as negative. Like you've got negative the disease. So that, imagine if I had negative 1%. It means like there's like nothing, Like the method they used for detecting it is screwing up. It's glitching because there's no disease to detect. Because if they can get that, it increases my chances of being cured significantly. They didn't tell me this in the moment, but this is basically what they were trying to do. They were like, "Yeah, it's 0.01%, but since I had acute lymphoblastic leukemia, that stuff could come back. So if we can bring it down to negative, to like nothing detectable, then chances are that it's going to be cured." So I was like, "You're telling me that I'm going to have to go through like the strongest, most epic chemo that's ever existed?" She's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Are you telling me this is going to be the greatest battle of my life that few people ever see?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm sorry." And I'm like, "When do we start?" Because by then I had thick skin, a thicker skin. I had suffered through pain. I had suffered through emotional and spiritual transformations. I was ready for this, and I'm like, "We're gonna." This is kind of racist, but I was like, "We're gonna call this chemo treatment the tides of Omaha Beach because it's gonna be bloody. And she's like, you can call it whatever you want. I don't think she knew what I was talking about. But I was like, actually, I was very excited because this would bring me a whole lot of comfort. If I know that there's still a little bit of disease in me, I'd freak out. You know, I'd absolutely freak out. So I was like, if we can kill this thing, if we can bomb it with the strongest things that we can hit it with, then I'm going to be much more calm. So let's do it. And she's like, I need you to know that we're not doing this because we're having fun. We're doing this because we want to cure you. And I'm like, I know. And she's like, I'm really sorry, but... And I'm like, I'm telling you, God damn it, I'm fine with this. I want this to happen. And she's like, okay, then we're going to do it next week. And I'm like, fine, let's do it next week. And so we did. They strapped me in, they put me in the hospital again. And they were like, okay, this is it, man. You're gonna get hit by some pretty hard stuff. And all the doctors came in, a whole bunch of people I hadn't even seen, but apparently they were part of the team. Because like I said in the first video or second, there was a whole team of people behind this. You know, it wasn't just one or two. There was a chief main guy, and there was a head of transplant, and all kinds of nurses, students, everyone was putting their thoughts and brains into this. So really, I mean, there was a whole gang. I had a whole gang of people, and they were all there, and they're like, you ready, Mr. Farkas? And I'm like, wow, damn, you're making a real big deal out of this. And they were like, well, we're gonna hit you with some pretty hard stuff. And they did. Damn it, this chemo that they hit me with, it was 3 or 4 different drugs. Some of them were directly injected into me. Others were drip fed. Some of them I had to do in the middle of the night. There was one that lasted 24 hours. Like, imagine getting chemo 24 hours. Just the thought of it makes me want to puke. It's just, you wake up and it's there. You go to sleep and it's there, and then they tell you, okay, we're gonna have to like check how much urine you're excreting from your body, because this could affect your kidneys. And I'm like, and it can affect your liver too. And I'm like, ah. and they even said that we're gonna have to give you some kind of special saline solution with other components, because some of this stuff needs to get dissolved in your blood, otherwise it hardens inside your body. And I'm like, oh my god. It's pretty harsh stuff. And so they did it, and for the first time in this entire treatment, you know how I said that chemo, it gives you like this bad sensation, but you don't really feel any pain. You feel, you know, pukey a little and tired and really fatigued and like annoyed. You get very irritated, but you don't feel any pain. This time, I did feel pain. I woke up the first or second day after chemo, and already I felt muscle aches. Now, it wasn't as bad as my great pain moment that I had. That was terrible. That felt like something in my nervous system. This was something much more systemic. Like, all of my body was feeling sort of cramped, and the doctors had to help me up, and I could still move pretty well, but you know, the muscles felt like you worked out way too hard 2 days before. And I had all kinds of other side effects, like my face and my arms got super swollen, to the point where I had to pull off my watch. And I mean, look at my wrists; they're tiny. Like, especially now that I've lost all my muscle mass. But it got so fat that, like, you saw this thingy here of skin, and it was all actually liquids that were getting trapped in my body. It's what the doctors had said was the reason they had to check for my urine and things like that. That's another thing I wanted to talk about. whenever you see cancer patients, most of the time, you see that they're bald and things like that. But another huge side effect is you're going to see them swollen. This is something in general, but I felt I got particularly swollen this time. But that's something in general. Like you'll see people that look really fat almost, and you're like, wow, they got chubby. That is not from eating. In fact, most likely that person hasn't eaten much recently. That is in fact from the drugs, from corticoids and the chemo itself. It can cause all kinds of swelling in the body. In fact, just as a quick side note, once I saw 2 women, and they were twins, I could tell. And one of them was healthy and the other one had cancer apparently. And they were completely different looking. Even though, one could tell they were twins, they looked completely different because, not just because one of them had no hair and was wearing some like a bandana, but her face was completely different. Her cheeks, her neck, there was like a sort of chubbiness to her. And that sort of made me realize the difference between a healthy person's sort of constitution and how they look and someone going through this. Like I had no idea just how swollen my entire body had gotten, and it had. And I also got all kinds of red markings around my body, like for example the backs of my arm got like reddish. It's something, the technical term is called a rash. Like in fact in Spanish you call this rash. So imagine a rash, kind of like an allergic reaction, and I'd get like spots, red spots of rashes everywhere. They would give me antihistamines for that and it would go right away. I also got dermatitis and extreme dryness of the skin. All of this from the last chemo. The first, like the normal chemos I had done, hadn't caused these things. I think the maximum I got was a little bit of dry skin, but really nothing serious, nothing worth investigating or nothing worth noting. So I got pretty lucky with the first chemos, but that strong chemo, the shores of Omaha Beach chemo that I got was much tougher on me. And in total, it was 4.5 days of chemo. But like the effects lasted much longer. And dermatitis, I can't even describe. It wasn't just any dermatitis. It was an itchiness in parts of the body that should not itch. Let's just leave it at that. Parts of the body that should not feel itching ever were feeling very itchy. There were other times that it got even itchier, but that's for later. That's a later video. But point is, some stuff that doesn't let you sleep. Let's just leave it at that. The dermatologist gave me all kinds of creams and creams with corticoids and things like that. And it got solved pretty easily once it got treatment, but for like maybe 5 days I was suffering. Let me tell you, one of the hardest things you can go through when you're going through some painful chemo treatment is if you can't sleep for some reason. That can be the hardest thing. Because sleep, remember, sleep is one of your strongest weapons against all of this. All the pain goes away, time passes faster. So if you can't sleep because something's itchy, that's just a death sentence. Really, psychologically, it kills you. So we went through that, and I was like all dazed from this. For a while, even my liver was shutting down. They had to give me some carnitine pills. I was taking 19 pills at the time, and I didn't really feel anything with the liver, but I could tell that the doctors were like, crap, we're losing him. They didn't tell me in the moment, but one of the infectologists was like, well, I was legit worried because giving carnitine, 9 pills of carnitine per day, Giving 9 pills of carnitine is in fact not scientifically proven to help. It's something experimental. Like that woman had, the infectologist had read everything that she could find about like helping liver function while applying this drug, you know, this leukemia drug, this chemotherapy drug, and she had read somewhere, like some obscure article, that carnitine might help. But in fact, like that was their last resort. My liver really was shutting down. And my girlfriend and my mom hadn't told me, but in the moment, like my skin and my eyes were yellow because my liver and my kidneys were sort of screwed. But I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel any pain or anything like that. Luckily, you know, luckily that didn't cause any problems. Luckily, I recuperated. Liver function started coming back. Kidneys started clearing up. There was no permanent damage. So, you know, it was a close call, but like, let's say I dodged another bullet there. Got lucky again, I suppose. Yeah, Omaha Beach was pretty hard. It's tough on all of us. And then they did the test on me again. What's it called? The bone marrow test. Took forever for my immune system to recuperate from that. Like I spent more time in the hospital recuperating than the actual chemotherapy itself. But they let me go. They're like, we're gonna come back with answers, and in fact, before they even let me go, like the last day, they were like, "Oh, we got the results. We will tell you now." And they were like, "It's negative. You've got negative 0.01%, which means your bone marrow is technically free of all disease, detectable disease." Now we play the waiting game. And I was like, "What do you mean waiting game?" And they're like, "Well, this is the thing. We've been checking and checking and checking everywhere, and we haven't found anyone in the entire world that's compatible with you, bone marrow wise, immune system wise, or whatever." I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, I know. We told you that was going to be easy because you seem like you've got European heritage, and you seem like just another European guy to us. But apparently, you're very unique." And I'm like, "You got to be kidding me! Like this is all like for nothing then." And they're like, "Well, no. Like technically, you don't have the disease anymore, and it's bought us a lot of time. Like for a few months, all you're gonna have to do is come in every month or so for a small chemo treatment of like maybe 3 days, which is made only to like just in case keep the disease under control, like not make it easy for the disease to come back if it wants to. You know, but like we can only do that 3 times, maybe 4." Eventually, like if you don't get the bone marrow transplant, it's very likely you're going to get the disease again, even if it's negative right now. You know, maybe we can't kill all the cells. And I'm like, F word, damn it, that's not good. And they're like, "Yeah, sorry, we're gonna check your mom to see if she's compatible." And in the end, she was. Like the results were pretty quick. She was 50% compatible. We're always looking for 100, but the truth is, you can only be 50% compatible if the donor is a mom or dad, is a parent, because of genetics, basically. You can only inherit 50% of one of the parents' genetics, so you can only be 50% compatible bone marrow wise. The other 50% with your other parent. So they're like, she's compatible. She's maximum compatibility for a parent. That's how they told me. They're like, it's good, like it's a good backup, but like ideally we need someone like 90 to 100%. Like this is a bone marrow transplant. Like we can't screw this up. And so I was like, "Oh man!" And they're like, "We're gonna have to wait," and we did for months. We waited, I believe, two months, coming in once every month for 3 days to do the check, you know, just in case. They do tests on me to see how much there is in my blood, how much disease. It always came back negative, but they would do chemo anyway. Weak chemo, really. I almost didn't feel it sometimes. And then they would let me go, and then they would keep me updated. No, there's no one compatible. And you know, I tried to keep myself distracted because trust me, like waiting and like being told that like there's a chance that there's no one compatible, there's a chance that I have to wait a year maybe, that's kind of hard, you know, especially for the kind of leukemia that I had. You know, I spent time with my girlfriend. I had, you know, Christmas, my birthday. I tried to stay positive, and I did. My brother didn't leave until way later, so I had all the support I wanted. But yeah, I'm actually going to leave for the next episode what happened to me afterwards with the transplant. Basically, someone did appear, but there's way more to the story because it's not that simple. Actually on Monday you're gonna hear that, because Friday I'm gonna talk about another subject, because Fridays is random topic day, remember. So yeah, we're doing really well with the time. I've got like maybe 3 more minutes, so I don't know. We're just gonna play Titan Quest. You can just skip to the next video if you're watching the playlist. Some really cool people have been contacting me. It's really like I knew that some people would talk to me about this, but I had no idea so many people would relate. This is so many people. I wouldn't say like a lot of people, but quite a few people have contacted me saying, I went through similar disease, I had this and that, and I had no idea. Like me personally, I had no idea that this other person had that disease. And I was always thinking like, yeah, like that person is actually super strong, like very very powerful, and what's the word, like patient and things like that. And now I think about it, it's because maybe they went through something like this, and you know, their fortitude increased. And lots of people saying, you know, like, I wish I would have come out with like this. I wish I had done something and told people, but you know, like I didn't see the use. But I'm glad you're doing it. And people that I don't know, I had no idea they were going through something like that. We went to university together and things like that, and I was like, damn, like I can't believe it. And people that are living in other countries are like, damn, you know, I just found out. And really, I'm just really glad I started this series. This turned out to be one of my best ideas yet. And it really helps me a lot. And I can, like, as a bonus, I can see my transformation. That's really cool. Speaking of transformation, before I finish this video, I'm making an announcement. After Titan Quest, but starting earlier, so I'm gonna like show you after Titan Quest. I'm gonna make a small video series on of recuperating my body after such a treatment, because I've lost a lot of muscle mass, and I'm very skinny fat, you know, which is the worst combination, really. So what I'm thinking of doing is I'm gonna like record and observe my own progress rebuilding that muscle, and hopefully it will inspire people not to be afraid to, you know, get back in there and start working out again. But yeah, that's like a small announcement I wanted to make. And we're getting close to 100 subscribers. I might do a special. I'm still trying to get it together to work, but I hope you like it. Once we reach 100, I'll make that awesome video. So yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this. It was just, moving on with the story, really. We're getting into the deeper stuff starting Monday. But on Friday, in 2 days, I'm gonna release another video. But it has nothing to do with the disease. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And see you in the next one. Bye.